Hey everyone, welcome to the Do the Thing podcast. This is your host, Stacey Lauren. Well, you guys, I'm excited. I love getting connected to people that are new to me and that I get to see the amazing work they're doing and then get to hear their story. I got connected to my next guest through one of the amazing Do the Thing community members, Anne-Marie. She's the host of About This Life podcast. I was interviewed on her podcast. She came on here. And we have been in each other's worlds for a while. And she introduced me to Elijah, who is the next guest on Do the Thing. And I'm so excited to get a chance to hear his story. I got to look at what he's doing. And oh my gosh, you guys, this is going to be really fun. So I am welcoming Elijah to the show. Hey, Elijah.
Hi, Stacey. Thank you so much for having me on. It's a pleasure and a privilege to be here. Just excited for our chat to do the thing.
Do the thing. Yeah. And I can already tell you are do the thing person. Yeah. So let's start with sharing your story. I'd love to hear all about you.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, how far back do you want me to go, honestly? Well, let's just start with the most relevant pieces, right? So I'm a twin. That's a big part of my identity. I was born to teenage parents. And honestly, growing up through life, we were really close, my twin and I. But it was really important for me to establish my own identity. So I always saw myself blowing my own way. But with that said, I gravitated towards letters and words while my twin sister gravitated towards numbers. So that's a big part of the foundation. And then growing up through school, grade school, always did pretty well. Got into college, was actually a first generation college graduate. And so that was really exciting for me. But in those days, was just like any other young person trying to figure out who I'm going to be in the world. And went through a lot of the trials and tribulations of it. Figuring this is not maybe my thing or this is more of my thing. I'm going through all that stuff. But then a big part of my journey was as an athlete, I was really, really trying to make my dad's dream for me come true. I got into that whole trying to make someone else's vision for my life come to reality, especially as a teenage parent. All the stuff he gave up so I could be who I am was really important for me. But I ran into so many roadblocks down that path, injury after injury, like God just telling me this is just not it, Elijah. So I went down that path enough to understand I should try my own, and eventually got to attend San Jose State on a merit scholarship that's where a lot of things went well for me, honestly. I graduated as a Dean Scholar, started a business, started a company, got a mentor, just went down the right path, so to speak, right? And then for sure, gravitated towards my love of languages, leveraging my interest in words and letters. And that's what kind of got me started and interested in culture. And then figuring out what I could do to serve all cultures, right? That's really kind of how I got through a lot of my college days and then into my professional career from real estate to tech and into just doing business now. It's been a good journey, a wild ride for sure, but a good journey.
Yeah, it's incredible when you are, multi-passionate, right? You've been able to tap into all these different things and really starting to identify what you're wanting and really what you're craving in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a big part of the journey to know who you are. And then I think a big part of my understanding for that was knowing who I'm not, trying so many things, realizing that's not me. And if I'm not that, then I must be left with this. And that's how I've been doing the thing. Definitely not letting grass grow under my feet. I'm definitely a doer, not a talker. Even though I can be quite elaborate and verbose at times, I think it's well placed, such as when I'm writing a book, for example. Of course, you got to get your words out. But with that said, I think there is a time to put the words aside and just get to doing.
I love how this kind of started with an identity craving where you're wanting to kind of come into your own identity, especially being a twin. And you just mentioned knowing who you are. What do you think helped you kind of tap into that part of you?
I think it was honestly the way I identified with my friends. So I had a pretty established social circle, if you will. I was a pretty popular guy in school and all this good stuff. I was a captain of the football team, prom king, that guy. I got the girl in high school. I married my high school sweetheart. Yeah, but that said, a lot of my friends I really identified with as they're taking that path so I can take a higher one, if that makes any sense. So I wouldn't necessarily get involved with crowds and think, oh, we're doing this. It was more like, oh, you're doing this, so I can do something else. I just never really identified with the let's do this together. It was more like, well, you're representing that world. I'm going to represent this one. And after so many interests and so many different paths I could have taken, eventually I got to the point where I was like, all right, well, I know what I can do. And yeah, it led to me doing what I'm doing now, which is my passion, right? It ignites me and I can't get enough of this. I just like doing what I do.
Yeah, let's talk about that more. So how did that start?
Honestly, it just started with understanding what's going on in my life that's right. After hitting your head against the pavement so many times, it's like, man, is there anything going right in this life? Of course, you can point to some things, but sometimes it's hard to find those. And when I found mine, it was really like, oh, well, I'm persistent. That's one thing I can say. I never give up. I persevere. I move through any obstacle that's come to my forefront. And I can say without a shadow of a doubt that doubt doesn't win in any instance. And so that's what led me to be the person I am, helping people conquer doubt. And then I tried to figure out what's the relation that I can offer value to people, because who wants to admit that they have doubts, even though we do. It's not something you just put on your sleeve. And so being a dreamer, I realized with all these dreamers as millennials, as we are, let me fuel that dream. And oftentimes, if anybody's pursuing a dream, you've got to overcome that doubt. You've got to conquer it. So now that's what I'm doing, is fueling dreams. I love it.
I love the words fueling dreams.
Thank you.
What does that business look like? What are you doing? How are people finding you? I'd love to hear all the things.
Yeah, great question. So I've actually evolved my offerings over the years because I've been adding value in various places and different levels, which is really a huge blessing, but it's never been quite on the scale that I've always wanted. And so I really want to help a large audience across different languages. So now I fuel dreams at motivation concerts. And so that's what I'm doing for the world, hosting these. My first one will be coming up here in the fall. It's just an opportunity where there's live performances, motivation challenges, and community building. But oftentimes, if I can just take a quick second to share, when it comes to pursuing something you're passionate about, or even something like a dream, right? Something positive, it's really important to keep your circle well monitored, and you got to often audit it for any negative or naysayers or anybody who's maybe just not on your team. And oftentimes what that means is you get a small circle of a select few who are helping you and honing your ability and belief in yourself. And I don't think it has to be so small. I think it can be a lot bigger. So it's important to build this community and bring together people in these environments so you don't just feel like you're in it alone. And then with the live performances, I actually perform myself as a creative artist, a fly timeless, in addition to other performers on stage. But that said, I blend motivational messages with cinematic music. So imagine your favorite movie, the climactic scene where the best of the best experience is about to happen for the protagonist. That music soundtrack, I'll put that behind a motivational message that tells you something to the effect of, you're so special, you change the way beauty is seen. That's just one of the examples. I have many, but then I perform them. And then in the midst of these performances, we have motivation challenges that help you see that you're not alone and identify and be vulnerable to find that strength.
Wow. I feel like I want to see it. Is it online? Can we see it online?
It's not yet. The first one's coming up, but we are preparing. I can share a flyer after this, but putting it now. So I'm putting the logistics together in place, just getting it all down. But yeah, that's the goal, for everybody to want to see it and be a part of it live. But the goal is to bring it. Well, I'm initially fueling America's dreams because I'm going to start America. And then I'll fuel the world's dreams after that, after I go.
So, okay, I have to slow down for a minute because I want to really understand what you're doing, because this is so big, this idea, right? Where you're able to put people in a physical space, right? Where you're then doing all the senses, where you're bringing these positive messages, you're showing something visually, and then they're having the sound too. That just feels like such an immersive experience. So what's your vision you have with the experience where someone hears about it and then they go in, and what does that look like for you? Are you renting the event space? Could you walk us through that whole process? Because I'm crazy interested about it. And I actually had an idea for some kind of speaking thing today. And I'm like, oh, man, you'd be great to partner with on that. Is what I'm thinking. That's one side of it. And then on the other side of it is so many people have all these dreams bottled up in their head, and they're like, oh, this would be a great idea. And then it just stays there, right? And I want to understand the full picture so then everyone can see what that process looks like for them too.
Absolutely. So a couple things. So logistically, yes, I will be renting out different performing arts theaters across America to host these concerts, right? The first one, I think we're looking at just over 500 people to be in attendance. But imagine walking into a space, right? There's ambient lighting. There's a lone figure in the stage ready to take you on a journey, an odyssey of the mind, if you will, that really journeys into the depths of what it means to be a human masterpiece and awaken that visual gift that you may have buried deep within you of the reality that you can realize when you step forward and boldly walk into that dream that you may have let lie dormant for any amount of time. So the goal here is you walk into this space, you take your seat, and then you're immediately ignited with this belief that maybe I can. And then that belief is bolstered into a more powerful realization that, yes, I can. And the old concept behind fuel is that, unfortunately, if you don't fuel your dream, doubt will kill it. Susie Kassem has a great quote that says, doubt kills more dreams than failure ever will. And it's really true. They get stuck in our mind where we don't necessarily have the ability to move past that. So imagine breaking through that barrier where a lot of us are on E for our dream car, our car to take us to that dream. And it's just a place to get fuel, right? Get a full tank so where you can reach that next milestone and then keep going on and on and on until you reach that realization. It's funny that you mentioned, because now I'm reading a book called The Seat of the Soul. Oh my gosh.
Oprah, right? Isn't it Oprah?
It's not Oprah's book. It's Gary Zukav, but she did review it and have him on the show a bunch of times. She did the foreword to this book, but yeah, amazing book. So the reason why I bring that up is because one of my initial takeaways, and I'm only like 30 pages in, we often sit in different seats in our lives, right? The first seat that most people sit in is the seat of the mind. And that's where doubt creeps in really easily, because the seat of the mind keeps you anxious and like wishing, hoping, thinking. You're kind of in this creation state, which is a great place to be, but not a place to get stuck. And then you move into the seat of the heart, which is feeling, well, I feel like I can do this. You feel more emboldened, empowered to follow your intuition. And that's great, but you're always feeling close. I'm so close. I'm so close. But then the seat of the soul is more like, I'm in this place where I appreciate everything I have, and then more can come in. It's the whole gratitude and all that good stuff. And then even the seat of the spirit is in the moment, alive in that. For me, it's on stage. For anybody else, it's in their moment, in their element. And so really bringing that out of people and getting them to the right driver's seat, because oftentimes we think we're in the right driver's seat and we might be in the wrong one.
Wow. So, okay, how do you get the guts to be like, I'm going to do this, and it's going to be, I think you said just 500 people or something. I'd have to listen back to here. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's so many people. Where does that even come from? So you have the vision, and then you're literally taking the action to put this together. And then I'm imagining you're coordinating other people to be a part of it. Where does that come from? How does that start?
Stacey, that's a great question, because I actually, in my life, have pursued so many different ventures, and they haven't always been so true to me, but they've been interesting. So I started with this merchandise, clothing business, started with services, got into real estate. All these things were interesting to me, but maybe not me. And one day I just realized that maybe I should just listen to the 10-year-old Elijah. He used to dream up this dream way back when, who had this real vision, because it was a very clear vision I always had and kept close to heart, but never acted on. So one day I said, maybe I'm gonna just do this. And then I got some inspiration. I was on YouTube, found some tracks, and was all sad for a moment because I was like, oh, I can't use these. They're unoriginal. But then I got the courage to move forward and break past that, found some producers who could create these tracks for me, just shared my vision. And then I ended up creating some just practice tracks. And they resonated so deeply with so many people. And my wife gave me so much encouragement. She's like, people need to hear this. Get this out there now. Mm-hmm. And so I spent a while figuring out what the best way for me to share this experience was. And then honestly, what gets me going is the fear of why not? I ask myself that oftentimes, what do I have to lose? And I think to myself, could I live a life where I could reject this possibility as much progress as I've made? And it terrifies me, like, no way. Well, it gets me wanting to do it now. I just watched this movie on Monday that's in theaters. It's like A Quiet Place or something, day one. Yeah. And the main character has a terminal disease. And I'm like, wow, no one of us ever knows how many days we have. What am I doing? Wasting my time away, thinking I've got time. There's a lot of quotes and videos on social media that say, you think you have time. That's the main thing that keeps your doubt alive. And so I'm like, let me just go for it. But I'm one of those people who the bigger, the better. If it was a crowd of 10,000, it'd be better for me than a crowd of 50. Honestly, that's just
yeah. Are you feeling like you see a stadium in your future?
Yeah, I want to fill Petco Park. That's where the San Diego Padres, that's where they play. But yeah, oh my gosh, that is my vision.
I happen to live in San Diego.
Nice, same. Oh my gosh, wow. Small world.
Oh, you live here? I
live in San Diego. Yeah.
Wow. Oh, that's so cool. Oh yeah, we'll have to connect for sure. Yeah. So stadium, we see a stadium.
Yeah, my goal is to fill a stadium 3 days a weekend at the least. and just every day sold out. I mean, up to the nosebleeds, not just
Yeah.
the Cyclone sign where they do some concerts. No, the full thing, the whole thing.
Yeah. I feel like I see it.
Yes.
Yeah. So what does that look like then for someone listening? Because I'm still hearing it. I'm tapping into your experience more and more. But imagine, so you're in the stadium and what does that look like with you, with the music, and how many people are speaking or creating stuff? I'd love to hear more about that too.
Great questions. Just give you some insight into the overall structure of the event, right? So there are some opening acts. Right now we have it as poets who are just going to speak it into you. But since my style, my creative artistry is so unique, there aren't many people, if any, doing what I do. The closest you can find is on YouTube. You see some clips of different folks, Tony Robbins or Les Brown, matched up over a music track. And then they're kind of like these motivational videos that kind of just send you off into your week. But you could actually experience that live because all the different people that comprise this composition, for them to be chopped and screwed into the right places would be a little tough to present. So me, with my positivity, I figured, let me just create this experience and create these tracks so I can give this people what they need, a great live experience. And so that's where it came down. And then, so the reality of what you would experience would be the opening acts, an MC, just kind of weaving everybody's performance together. And then my gig, or my set, if you will, is kind of the main stage because it's a fly timeless motivation concert. And as a creative artist, I'm timeless. But that said, get into the opening track. I'm performing, giving you this great message. I'll say something like, every fabric of your DNA was created to win. It's proven by all the victories in your life. And then just go on and on. I don't want to spoil all this good stuff, but yeah, it's over a track. And then it pauses into an opening experience. That's actually from my book. It's a cool icebreaker. We have some people come up on stage. They read different lines from the preface of my book, Close Your Eyes and Look, and then speak what that line means to them. And then go into another performance. Then we do a motivation challenge, another performance, an intermission, and then performance, another motivation challenge, another performance. And then I talk about specifics of how to conquer doubt, because that's a real takeaway I want people to have. And I break it down between energy, frequency, and vibration, right? So like I might ask, who's ever seen a Tesla out there on the road? You know, some people raise their hand, whatever. Some of them might have driven there. And then break the experience down to understand that doubt has an energy just as much as belief, but they're oftentimes diametrically opposed energies, where the energy of a doubt is very different from the energy of a belief. And then just go into how that connects into the frequency of your breathing pattern. Because oftentimes when you switch from thinking about a doubt to believing in a belief, your breathing reflects that. You kind of have this sigh of relief. And then the longer you can keep that frequency going, reflects in your breathing pattern, the frequency of that breathing. And that is your point of attraction to where you can attract and manifest. So a simple correlation is listening to doubt radio versus listening to belief radio. You're not going to hear doubt radio when it's 90.1 if you're tuned into belief radio when it's 100.7 or something like that.
Totally. Wow. Yeah. So are you able to also go into events that are pre-existing? So if I was going to do an event here, would you be able to do what you do and insert into someone else's event?
Absolutely. Yeah. Guesting is definitely a primary way for me to present myself. It's just as long as I can do what I do the way I do it. I've done keynotes in the past. I've even been awarded as an award-winning keynote speaker, but I like to do something kind of unorthodox to conventional keynote speaker with my music. Yeah. So yeah, but as long as I can do my thing, I'm happy to. Love it.
Yeah. I love how you say do my thing because it's all about that. Yeah. Well, how can people support you with what you're doing with this? Because it still sounds like it's forming. It sounds like it's happening, but it's still in this infancy where you need the more support to really kind of get it to go. What would be the best way people can really help you?
Yeah, great question. Right now, by the end of the day, actually, I'll have a sign-up list, right? So anybody who's interested in pre-ordering or just getting on the wait list so you can be one of the first to buy these tickets, you'll be able to do that on the website. It'll just be able to, once you click in, say, hey, I like what you're doing. This sounds amazing. Make sure I get notified. And that'll be the first way. Other than that, it's really just, I'm preparing everything. And I know that sounds crazy because I'm just a doer, but there's a right way to do things. And so I want to make sure, since it is such a huge vision and so close to my heart that it's done well, that means a lot to me because it's about the experience for the person at the end of the day. So it can be an ongoing thing. And then the goal will be to bring it into new languages and stuff like that. But to answer your question, right now, the goal is to just stay involved, sign up on that wait list, if you will, and then ready. Yeah.
And then can you tell us about your book?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So Close Your Eyes and Look. That's the name of the book I wrote. It's a story about how to journey within, specifically how to journey within to acquire success. That's the name of it. And I say to acquire success because, in my opinion, success is a perspective, and you acquire the perspective whether or not you're successful depending on where you're at in your life, because you may think you're unsuccessful, but somebody else way further down economically or financially may think that's all they want in their life. So it really is all about perspective. But it follows a dreamer. His name's Micah. He journeys within to realize and find out what can make his dream come true. And he follows his heart to meet all these different parts of himself, right? So, yeah. So he meets a character called, it's funny that you mentioned that, because that's what Anne-Marie actually, that's what incentivized her to invite me back onto her show. Like, I know you mentioned that you're in close contact, but we had our first podcast. And then she's like, I'm going to read your book. She read my book. She's like, you got to come back on my show. And then we had a great conversation after that. But yeah, Micah journeys with Mr. Hart to meet these different parts of himself, like Mastermind, Lady Spirit, Madam Gratitude. And it's all a journey about how to find ourselves once we lose ourselves, really.
I have a challenge. It's called the Find Your Voice Challenge, where I help people through that process. And I love anything that speaks to it. So I'm just thinking of, how I could tap into that through that challenge. Because I think the more that it sounds like you're in this world, so you get it, right? Where so many people are living on autopilot, and it's just hard to even sometimes slow down enough where you're like, wait, what am I doing? Who am I? And what do I even want in this world, right? And so when you can slow down enough, then you're able to reflect and start to realize either you want to change or you want to do something new or do something as amazing as what you're doing now. And it sounds like stemming from that identity parts with what you're saying in the beginning has really stemmed you on this journey of really tapping in so deep to this place of just knowing, right? And this book is almost an interpretation of it. And now the experience that you're creating is a whole nother kind of magnification of the whole thing.
Yeah. And that's a great way to say it. Honestly, I look back on my life as, it's a common phrase to hear, take the path of least resistance. And I think a lot of times that's nice. Like, oh yeah, great. But it's something I tried. And now that I'm in this trajectory, I'm more on the path of most allowance. How much can I allow in my life rather than just how much can I walk against the resistance and the least amount of resistance possible with that. So the reason why I think what you said is so important is because when people find themselves in that autopilot state, it's like being frozen in a state of inactivity because they can't necessarily see themselves breaking the mold of what's easy, right? The routine. And unfortunately, routine is what makes our lives go by so fast because you can't distinguish your days. Thursday looks just like last year's Tuesday and so on and so forth. But getting on that adventure of just learning yourself really takes your life to a place where your every day feels like a year because it's so transformational in many aspects and just growth oriented. So that's kind of where I'm at now, where I can see myself carrying buckets of water out of the fire of learning yourself. It's a fun journey because it's rewarding to see the look on people's faces when they get to realize, wow, I don't have to be stuck for so long.
Yeah, because I think people think sometimes they have to stay stuck. They don't realize that sometimes it just takes one little step. Yeah, what would you suggest for someone that's feeling that? They're hearing you and they're like, oh, I could never do that, right? Even writing the book or doing what you're doing, what would be something that would help them get unstuck?
First, there's two things, right? So one is a quote that I have to share. Oh my gosh, it's changed my life and I have to share it. It's adversity is the diamond dust heaven polishes its jewels with. It's by Thomas Carlyle. Sorry, I have to give him the credit. But adversity is the diamond dust heaven polishes its jewels with. Understanding that adversity is not there to keep you stuck. It's there to promote you. And if you weren't a diamond, you wouldn't be getting polished. So that's the first thing. Second, I started my book with one sentence. So many people are so scared to start with one step. And the first day, I could literally only write one sentence, and that's all I got. I was frustrated, but I just committed to I wonder. The next day, a paragraph. The next day, a page and a half on a Word doc. Mind you, I started with one sentence. And so it doesn't matter what the journey is, whether it be weight loss or or just being yourself. The first step doesn't have to be a huge progression because it's a major progression when it's compared to nothing. And so I would say to anybody getting ready to start, make your start small as possible, honestly, and then just make it a little bit bigger the next day. Because trying to make the big, huge step is what keeps us so stuck. But if you can make it so small, really tiny, I mean, anybody can make a tiny step if you think about it. So that's momentum.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Whatever step that is that you're going to take, that's going to get you to take the next step. I think it's so important to tap into that because if so many people think they have to go from here to here. And for those of you listening, I'm showing how many feet? 4 feet radius. Yeah, something like that. But if you could just go right there. And I love what you said, just write a sentence and then write a half a page and then write a page and then go. Because it is daunting when you think of writing a whole book, right? Or you think of filling a whole stadium, right? But if you can start with something, then you're able to get into the momentum.
Yeah, honestly, the hardest part about it all is the why, because the why really drives people. But if you think about the kid you, the 7 or 8-year-old version of you standing next to you as a personified person looking at you, they're cheering you on like no other. And who else's applause really matters? Like, think about it. That can get you going. That's what gets me going, at least. So that's what I tell people all the time. Think about the person who's not going to be able to see the results of your efforts. And that's that little kid, that little version of you. But you could still live for that person because they were counting on you and they were serious in that time when they were dreaming. So be serious in this time when you can make it happen.
Yeah. Well, is there anything I didn't ask you that you wish I asked you?
This is a great question. Honestly, I was just enjoying the flow of the conversation. But if I could share one more thing, I think it would just be to anyone listening who may think, oh, these are just conversations. People just have these. I was terrified. I was really scared in those days when I just thought maybe a dream is just something cool people do. I don't know if it's actually something to really act upon, but being scared is kind of the first level because Zig Ziglar says you can either forget everything and run or face everything and rise. And then there's subtle cues, subtle clues in everything around us, even imperfect. You might think, oh, I'm imperfect. Well, even imperfect's telling you I'm perfect, right? You're perfectly perfect as you are if you break the word down. And then even doubt, right? Doubt, if you break the word down to DOUBT, do you and be true. If you just do you and be true to you, your authentic self will be received. And that energy is irreplaceable and undeniable, right? So there's all these little clues in the world that, honestly, the world needs you, right? So unfortunately, I have to say this, but it's a selfish act to keep the world from experiencing your gift. They do need it. And imagine somebody's so in need of the story that you've walked and the journey that you've undergone, but they can't wait to realize, wow, you made it. I'm just a kid who believed in himself. Maybe I'm older than a kid now, but I'm still young. So I guess the fact is, never let grass grow under your feet. Never believe you're smaller than you are because you're huge and you're a masterpiece awaiting to be unveiled. And I can't live this life without experiencing the gift you have to offer. So there's so many more of us like me out there. So be you for us. We need it.
Wow. And why do you think it's important someone gets to know themselves and what they want while they're taking action and doing the thing?
Yeah. I love how you weave this in. It's so cool. But I think the importance of getting to know yourself is realizing why this gift was given to you, right? As old as you've ever been, it's the youngest you'll ever be. And the fact is, if you don't understand why you're here, no one else can do it as good as you, right? And the fact uncovering that gift stems from believing that you're here for a reason. And so it's up to you to share, but first discover what that reason is. That's huge, right? Because if you can say, I'm here because I want to be, that's a great first step because that grows into I'm here because of X, Y, and Z. And I know I'm here to fuel America's dreams right now, right? So that's just me, but you're here for another reason and we can't wait to discover it. But if you do have this, where do I start? What the heck am I supposed to do now? Just go for the world. And I say this common phrase, let go and let God. It's like, how the heck do you do that, right? It's just esoteric. But the reality is just go and be. You're a human being, not a human doing. So you don't necessarily have to do as much as you have to be. So just go somewhere and just be and let it flow to you. It's easier.
Okay, so what would be your number one piece of advice for people on doing the thing?
On doing the thing, my number one advice would be the person. Because when you are the person, you can do the thing effortlessly. And that's what means the most. Because then you don't have to try to do it as much as you just get to do it.
Please share where people can sign up on the event list and get your book and all the good things.
Yeah, absolutely. Flytimeless.com, FLY timeless.com. There'll be some links there for about, you can get all the links to my creations, to the motivation concerts. You can sign up to get your notification as soon as the tickets are available. Like I said, the first show will be here in San Diego, but hopefully coming to a city near you if you're not here in San Diego like Stacey and I. And yeah, I mean, just stay in the loop. I'm hoping to make some waves here. So ideally you hear them out in wherever you are, but from my steps here to your steps there, let's just make sure our steps reach new atmosphere.
Thank you so much for coming on. This was so good doing this with you.
You're welcome, Stacey. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
And for you guys, do the thing. Don't wait for opportunity. Create it. And hey guys, have you checked out my new Facebook group yet? Come to dothethingcollaboration.com. And you can go to dothethingcommunity.com where we do our challenges.